Let's talk about frames and groups. Again, it's Figma Tools panel. When we hover here, we see region tools. Yeah, but today we'll be talking specifically about frames. Sections and slices we'll discuss much later when we'll have more knowledge. We'll go step by step. First of all, we'll start with frame, and frame is one of the first things that you have to learn after shapes. Why do we need to learn frames after shapes? First of all, we need to know shapes before everything because, as we discussed, design consists of shapes and text. That's it, shape and text. But when we're creating something, I also told you about that. When we put text and shapes into a container, this is what we call design. Like when we're creating a mobile screen, and inside of the mobile screen we'll put shapes and text, the mobile screen itself will be our container. When we're creating a poster, let's imagine we take just paper, not the digital poster, but let's imagine the real physical one. You take a piece of paper, you draw some shapes, you put some text there, and the piece of paper itself is a container. And to create all these containers, basically in Figma called frames. Yeah, let me discuss why I love so much this concept of frames. Because before Sketch, Photoshop, they called it artboard. Basically, frame and artboard are similar, but I really love the idea behind the frame, why it's called frame, not an artboard. Because, as we discussed already, as I told you already, this main area, this entire main area is our canvas. This is where we're creating. Imagine that you have absolutely like huge canvas you can walk with. This is what you are working with. And now you want to create out of this canvas, you want to take particular pieces of this canvas and frame them, put them into a frame, similar to a picture. When you're creating any art, as you know, you take the frame and you put the canvas on this frame, and then you wrap your canvas around the frame. And in this case, you can still draw, you can even draw, you go outside, you take the canvas with you, you draw everything, but then the edges, you can wrap, you want to change, for example, the frame in what the picture will be. And then you can wrap your canvas on the frame and you will see exactly what people have to see. So that's why I really love the concept of frame. Let me show you the example. Maybe it's hard to understand yet, but let me show you an example. Let's imagine this is our huge canvas. We decided to create something on this canvas, and we created a couple of different shapes like ellipses, rectangles, maybe some lines, maybe we'll even add some stars here. So this is our element, this is our object that we created. But we don't want to show people, like everything from here. We just want to show part of it, just part of this image. Our canvas has lots of different stuff. We can have even like, let's create another object here, another will be here, another star will be here, and it will be much smaller somewhere here. But then I realized that like I just want to show the corner of it and everything, and what I want people to see is just part of this picture, because I had to create a circle just to just because it was easier rather than to draw it like the corner. What I want to show to people is just part of this. So in this case here, I go and select frame or F. So basically, let's not go here. Let's press just F. And now we're in the frame mode. And now I can create my frame for the picture that I created. And once I created it, boom, this is what I want to show. And inside, as you can see, some elements are outside of the frame yet, and some of them are inside. In Figma, it works like that. When you have just absolutely anything on the canvas, like this, and when you create a frame, when you select absolutely all the objects, then all of them will be included inside of the frame. But when you are selecting just part of this object, only the objects that are fully fit the frame will be added to the frame. And as you can see, line wasn't added and all the circles were not added to the frame. But usually we don't work with that like Figma. This is from art. From art, when we're working with art, we creating something on canvas first and then we put it on frame. When we're working with Figma, usually we start with the idea what exactly the element that we are going to create, what is the container in which our design will be. And in this case, we press F and we create the container, and then inside of the container we create all the shapes that we are thinking to add. And then when we create these shapes inside of the frame, they stay inside of the frame, but I can move them a little bit out and people will see just this picture. It doesn't go outside of the frame because inside of our frame, this is what I want to show to people. And Figma has this incredible thing. When you select the frame, it has clip content. If you want to see the entire canvas for this frame, you click here and you will see all other objects that are included in frame. But when you click clip content, boom, this is what people will see. This is specifically useful to know when you're creating, for example, let's imagine the mobile screen, when you're creating a mobile app that will be scrollable, something like this, something like, let's imagine that this is our contact screen, and then I have lots of different elements there. And to show that these are not all the elements, I select the frame, clip content, and I show that, oh, we have more content there below. Okay, got it. But at this particular moment, this is for me, like for a developer or for a designer or for a manager, to show that we have something below. Of course, we can change the size of the frame to show absolutely everything, to show that the screen. But what people will see will be in this particular frame. Like, let's imagine that this is the size of our mobile phone, and that's it. And then we have huge content here, or let's select all these elements, put them here. At the top, we will have the title for this element, and then we have the entire elements. But to show that we have something below, let's imagine that below we will have something else, like another object, and we show that, yeah, but where's the banner? Remember we discussed the banner. Oh yeah, it's there. Okay, just people scroll down and they will see the banner there. Oh, like awesome, amazing. But what people will see by default is clip content, and this is what people will see. This is what frame is. And by default, Figma has lots of options. When you click F, on the right side, immediately you will see different options for frames. Phone, tablet, desktop, presentation, watch, paper, social media, Figma community, and archive. Archive, for example, when you're creating for some old devices, the archive will be here. Sometimes it's super convenient and useful because, as I said, one of the most popular size of the font still is 375 by 812. So that's why you will find it here. When you go in this panel, as you can see, you can still find 375 by 812, but now it's under iPhone 13 mini, only mini. Just keep it in mind when you're creating something. When you're working with Android, as you can see, we have Android small, Android large. But honestly, when I had the phone, Android phone, it was Pixel 4, and the size of it, the ratio was 4:14 by, I don't remember exactly, by 8 something. So basically it was already bigger than that. What size for mobile apps to create, we'll discuss in the module about mobile apps. Today we're talking about frames. And what does it mean that you have pre-default parameters here? You have pre-installed frames for you. So when you're creating mobile screens, like designs for mobile apps, and you know that you're creating, for example, for iPhone 14, then you just click here and the frame will be immediately created for you. If you want to create, for example, desktop, which means that website, when you're creating a website, you choose like desktop and boom, you created the frame for you. And this is how easily you can create it. The more you practice, the more you understand, oh, by the way, TV, this will be HD format. But when you want to go with full HD, then you go to presentation mode and then slide 16 by 90. This is also full HD. The more you practice, the more you work with frames, the more you design something, the more you understand what exact frames you need to work with and what exact frames you need to create for your particular situation. And this should be based only on the target audience that will be using your design and also the devices that target audience will be using your designs at, and also where it will be presented, where it will be used. By where it will be used, you will decide the size of the frame. If you are creating a TV application, then you create 1920 by 1080. I'm pretty sure that in the future we'll start creating immediately in 4K. Honestly, probably not. Probably we'll start creating, still we'll continue creating in 1920 by 1080. Maybe, just maybe, the size will be not 16 by 9 by 16 by 10, which becomes more and more popular. 16, 10. So it will be this. Is it the right size in this case? It seems like that. Yeah. Wow. Awesome. Anyway, so this is what we'll see. Oh no, we need to do this by 16 multiple 10. Yeah, this is the size that you will be working with. Maybe in the future we'll see, who knows. But this is how you create all these frames. So Figma for you has already predefined sizes, and you can use them. When you're creating posters, for example, when you're working mostly with a print design, then you go to paper and then you will find the sizes that you need. If you don't have the sizes that you need, in this case, you press F and you start creating the frame, and then you will see these parameters here on the right side, and then you can change the width and height to the parameters that you need. For example, if you don't have a particular size, then you'll start typing it here like 2000 by 4000. You're creating something. Let's imagine when you're creating something 2 meters by 4 meters, or maybe you're creating 2 feet by 4 feet. You can do it here. Just keep the proportions, because we are working here with a vector-based graphic. By keeping proportions, you can create whatever you want. Just keep in mind that if you are working specifically with vector, not raster objects. So this is how you can create frames super fast and easy. Phone, done. Desktop, done. Presentation or TV app, done. This is how you do it. But now let's talk about some additional things. Let's talk about groups. Yeah, sometimes people don't understand the difference between frames and groups, and what is the group in general and what is the frame. So here we have all these elements, and when we look at the panel, by the way, as you can see in the panel now, in the layers panel now, we see that some elements are lighter, some of them are darker, like have like bolder text. This bold text is for frame, and frame in the layers panel has this like hash sign or cell if you want to. And all other elements here, they're not highlighted as frames. Why so? Because frame is a parent element. As the most like parent element, so this is our canvas that has can have absolutely anything, but once you created a frame, it becomes a parent element for some kind of picture that you want to show to your users or visitors. And what is group? Well, group is just the element of organizing elements. While frame can organize elements, it just specifically what will be shown to people. Group is just the element that allow you to group some elements together, and it will be just much easier for you to move them from one point to another one. How to create a group? How to group elements together? The simplest way to do that is to press Command or Ctrl G. Or you press right click, and here you see group selection, and you see here what we need to click. What is the hotkey for group selection? You click here group selection, boom. Now we have here in the panel, in the layers panel, we see group 1, and we have some frames. Another difference between group and frame. Frame, as I said, it's just a frame. It's just the element that will be shown to people. Group, on the other side, just groups elements. It doesn't by changing, for example, the position of different elements inside of the group, you are changing also the size of the group itself. So now the group got bigger. You can see width here is this. Now I move it here. I select group again, and now the width is smaller. But it's group. It's really cool to group elements together so you can move them together. Before, when we didn't have a group, every single element was separate. And now if I want to move them together, I had to select all of them and now to move. But once I deselected them, now everything is separate again. Oh my God. And now I need to select it again. It's not convenient just. But when you group elements together, Command G, now it's a group. If you have all these elements, all these same elements inside of the frame, now when you move the frame, the elements are moving with you as well. Like you move the frame and you see that elements are moving as well, especially if I click clip content here, they're moving as well. But when I change the position inside of the frame of each particular element, it doesn't affect my frame at all. So my frame stays the same. The only thing that is changing, I'm changing the position of the elements. The frame stays the same. Why? Because we predefined the frame. The frame is what will be shown. Let's imagine that you have a piece of paper, just a piece of paper in front of you, and you have all these different elements. You dropped on piece of paper different objects and elements. When you start moving the piece of paper, all the elements will move with you. But when you move them out of this piece of paper will not change its size. It will still be the same piece of paper, but you will change the position of the elements. But when we have a group, we can't imagine it in real life, but when you have a group, this is what helps you to work just easier with elements. You have multiple elements together, including text, for example, and this is what you move. While when we'll start working more and more, and when we start creating more complex objects, you will understand on practice what's the difference, what's the main difference between groups and frames. In addition to this lesson, there are a couple of things that I want to mention here as well. How to work with frames so you will not have any problems with that in the future, or when you see that something has changed and like, oh my God, what just has changed? I didn't want it to be this way. So let's imagine that you have a frame. By the way, let's create a frame from the very beginning again. You press F, then you select from the parameters here, frames here, or you just drag and create the new frame here. Now, in the frame, let's create a couple of shapes. Let's create just 2 shapes. Or let's start with just one. Let's start it easy. So now, if you want to change the size of a frame, you just change it. And that's it. The object is not moving if you're changing the right and bottom parameter. But when I move up, the rectangle is moving with me. What's happening here? When I move left, the rectangle is moving with me. Why? Why so? Why it's not changing its position when I'm moving here? Well, it's because frames have constraints. All the elements that are inside of the frame have constraints. We will discuss constraints in the next lesson because it will be too much for you at once. What I want to say here, that if you want to change the size of the frame without changing the position of the object, press Command or Control on Windows when you are changing the position of the top side of the frame or left side of the frame in this case, or just any other position. So by holding Control or Command, you are changing only the size of the frame. That's it. It doesn't affect the elements inside of the frame. By holding Command and Shift, you are moving it proportionally. You're changing proportionally. By holding Command, Shift, and Option and changing the size, you're changing it proportionally in all directions. It can be super helpful and super useful for you, so keep it in mind that if you want to change the size of the frame without affecting all the elements inside of the frame, hold Command. Like that. If you have additional thing to know, if you have multiple objects created in another frame, for example, or just anywhere, and you want to add them not into a group, not to group them, but to add them immediately into a frame, then press right click. You will see here frame selection, not group selection, but frame. It's like, let's put it into a frame. And then you press Option, Command, G. Let's go here, Option, Command, G, and now you have a frame. And now you can change the parameters of this frame by holding Option and Command, so I don't want to affect elements inside. When I change these parameters, boom, our frame is bigger and our objects are still here. If I take the same objects and just group them, if I have just group of elements and I start changing the size of the group, you see what's happening? Group always affect the elements themselves. This is what you need to know. This is also additional difference between groups and frames. So here we have a frame, and one additional thing that you have to know about Figma, that when you have any object inside of the frame, it stays inside of the frame till it's part of the frame. When you put it outside of the frame, you can look at it here in the layers panel. When I move object outside of the frame, boom, now it becomes part of the canvas. It's not part of the frame, which means that when I export, for example, this frame, it will be empty. Even if it will be something like this, when I export this element, this frame, it will be empty. Why? Because it doesn't have anything. So please always check. If you see that you exported and now your exported file doesn't have logo, doesn't have some objects, most likely those objects are out of the frame that you are going to export. Let me remove this so we have everything clear here. Frame and object. The object has to be inside of the frame. If you want to move object outside of the frame, but still keep it in the frame, when you're moving, press spacebar. You start moving and then press spacebar. And now I move the object outside of the frame, but it's still part of the frame. And when I change the position of the frame, the object will move with me. When I export this frame, it will still be like empty, because when we click preview, we see that, okay, the frame is here and the preview is here, almost like awesome, but it will be exported, you know, the frame will be outside and it will be empty, and the object will be on the other side. So that's not what you want probably to export. In this case, when you clip content, then in the preview, you will see just the frame itself, empty. The more if it's still complicated for you, just start creating frames. Start creating objects, shapes that we discussed in the previous lesson. Start grouping them together. Command G. Then create frames, F, from predefined parameters, move frames, move object inside of the frame, outside of the frame. Select frame and holding Command Option, start changing its size. Put elements inside of the frame and start changing the position of the frame to understand how it works. Because the more you know about the tool, the more efficient you become. The faster you become, the more professional, you become the master of the tool. And then when you become a master of a tool, you don't think about the tool. You think about what you're creating. Lots of different things that I create today, lots of the designs like mobile apps, websites, anything that I'm creating with Figma, I don't even think what I'm doing with the tool itself. My fingers know what to do. My hands know what to do. I just do stuff. In my head, I just have the final results that I want to achieve. That's it. And I achieve that super fast just because I don't think about the tool. How did I master Figma? Well, by doing these exercises. Every single day I did these exercises and I tried to understand, when I do this, what will happen? When I do this, what will happen? And I see and memorize what's happening, and now I know exactly, like, if the group is outside of the frame, it will not be exported. If the object is inside of the frame, and then it will be exported. If I want to move it somehow here, I want to export only just this part, and I want to show only this part, but I want all the elements to be inside of the frame, I'll hold spacebar. If I want to exclude the element, it will be outside. If I created something just for fun during the exploration stage, if I created different shapes and I really love what it looked like, then I just select them together, Command Option G, and now I have a frame immediately. That's it. This is how you work. This is how you do that stuff. So please follow me with all these steps one by one and start creating, start learning. Little by little, from these simple pieces, you will have a huge picture that you will be able to use. Now play with frames and groups. See you in the next lesson.